We are coming on the air with breaking news in Washington, where President Biden is set to speak at a high-stakes summit with world leaders. The president hosting leaders from NATO to celebrate its 75th anniversary and shore up support for the war in Ukraine. But the international summit comes as the president contains domestic fallout here at home. Democrats still weighing whether to replace him as the party's nominee after his debate performance against former President Trump. And today's summit being viewed closely as a major test as he insists he is not leaving the race. I want to go straight to our senior White House correspondent, Kelly O'Donnell. Kelly, what can we expect from the president here?
Well, this is a world stage moment in his own backyard here in Washington, D.C., with 38 leaders of the NATO nations and other partner nations who are here. And certainly all of them in individual and group meetings will also be taking a measure of the man. Some of them, they have known him over the years, even decades. Others, like the United Kingdom's new prime minister, newer to the world stage with Mr. Biden. But a chance to assess how they think he is doing. And at the same time, another test for the president to reassure Democrats in his own party, lawmakers and voters, the general public, that, as he says, he is staying in the race and that he has the fitness and the ability to continue to conduct the business of the office he holds and the one he is seeking again with re-election in the fall. So for the president, these are key days to also highlight one of the things he thinks is one of his great accomplishments in this term, and that is bringing together NATO partners to support Ukraine at times when that was difficult and challenging, and in many ways it remains so. So that is one of the things we expect the president will talk about when he honors the 75th anniversary of NATO. We expect him to speak for about 10 minutes or so, perhaps a bit longer. That, too, will be notable because all of his public remarks since the debate have been watched with great scrutiny.
All right, Kelly, we'll have you stand by. Let me bring in senior Washington correspondent Hallie Jackson. Hallie, it's hard to imagine folks don't watch moments like this, speeches like this, without applying a sharper degree of scrutiny on the president's words and actions.
Yeah, particularly after what has happened over the last couple of weeks. And that goes, Lester, likely for viewers at home, but also for lawmakers on Capitol Hill, with tonight at least 9 Democratic members of Congress publicly calling on President Biden to withdraw. Remember, this is a scripted setting for him. It is not that live, unscripted, impromptu setting that you're going to see in about 48 hours at that potentially lengthy press conference where he will undoubtedly be peppered with questions about his age, about his stamina, about his fitness for office at this moment, Lester. But a key moment for him on the world stage now. Lester.
And again, that press conference later in the week, and
right.
A lot of expectation about this. But here is the president now approaching the podium at the 75th anniversary observances of NATO.
Welcome. In 1949, the leaders of 12 countries, including President Truman, came together in this very room. History was watching. It had been 4 years since the surrender of the Axis powers and the end of the most devastating war the world had ever known. Here, these 12 leaders gathered to make a sacred pledge to defend each other against aggression, provide their collective security, and to answer threats as one, because they knew to prevent future wars, to protect democracies, to lay the groundwork for lasting peace and prosperity, they needed a new approach. They needed to combine their strengths. They needed an alliance. And here they signed the Washington Treaty and created the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the single greatest, most effective defense alliance in the history of the world. Mr. Secretary General, leaders of NATO countries, foreign and defense ministers, representatives from partner nations and the European Union, and members of Congress, distinguished guests, welcome to the 2024 NATO Summit. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to host you in this milestone year, to look back with pride at all we've achieved and look ahead to our shared future with strength and with resolve. Together, we rebuilt Europe from the ruins of war, held high the torch of liberty during long decades of the Cold War. When former adversaries became fellow democracies, we welcomed them into the alliance. When war broke out in the Balkans, we intervened to restore peace and stop ethnic cleansing. And when the United States was attacked on September 11th, our NATO allies, all of you, stood with us, invoking Article 5 for the first time in NATO history, treating an attack on us as an attack on all of us. A breathtaking display of friendship that the American people will never, ever, ever forget. Through all this history, when great changes occurred, people would ask, can NATO adapt? And every time we proved we could adapt, and we did, evolving our strategies to stay ahead of threats, reaching out to new partners to increase our effectiveness. And here with us today are countries from the Indo-Pacific region. They're here because they have a stake in our success, and we have a stake in theirs. Today, NATO is more powerful than ever, 32 nations strong. For years, Finland and Sweden were among our closest partners. Now they have chosen to officially join NATO, and because of the power and meaning of Article 5 guarantee, that's the reason. It was the most important aspect of the alliance in 1949, and it is still the most important aspect. I'd also note, Finland and Sweden joined the alliance not just because their leaders sought it, because their citizens called for it in overwhelming numbers. Remember, NATO's character is fundamentally democratic, always has been and always must continue to be. And today, NATO is better resourced than it ever has been. I want to pause on this because it's significant. In the year 2020, the year I was elected president, only 9 NATO allies are spending 2% of their defense GDP on defense. This year, 23 will spend at least 2%. And some will spend more than that. And the remaining countries that have not yet reached that milestone will get there soon. This remarkable progress, proof that our commitment is broad and deep, that we're ready, that we're willing, we're able to deter aggression and defend every inch of NATO territory across every domain: land, air, sea, cyber, and space. My friends, it's good that we're stronger than ever, because this moment in history calls for our collective strength. Autocrats want to overturn global order, which is by and large kept for nearly 80 years and counting. Terrorist groups continue to plot evil schemes to cause mayhem and chaos and suffering. In Europe, Putin's war of aggression against Ukraine continues, and Putin wants nothing less than Ukraine's total subjugation, to end Ukraine's democracy, to destroy Ukraine's culture, and to wipe Ukraine off the map. And we know Putin won't stop at Ukraine. But make no mistake, Ukraine can and will stop Putin. Especially with our full collective support. They have our full support. Even before Russian bombs were falling in Ukraine, the alliance acted. I ordered the U.S. reinforcements at NATO's eastern flank. More troops, more aircraft, more capabilities. And now the United States has more than 100,000 troops on the continent of Europe. NATO moves swiftly as well, not only reinforcing the 4 existing battle groups in the east, but also adding 4 more in Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania, and Slovakia, essentially doubling NATO's strength on the eastern flank. Together, we've built a global coalition to stand with Ukraine. Together, we provided significant economic and humanitarian assistance. And together, we've supplied Ukraine with weapons it needs to defend itself: tanks, armored fighting vehicles, air defense systems, long-range missiles, and millions of munitions. The United States and nearly 24 allied partners have signed bilateral security agreements with Ukraine. and more countries will follow. Today, I'm announcing the historic donation of air defense equipment for Ukraine. The United States, Germany, the Netherlands, Romania, and Italy will provide Ukraine with the equipment for 5 additional strategic air defense systems. And in the coming months, the United States and our partners intend to provide Ukraine with dozens of additional tactical air defense systems. The United States will make sure that when we export critical air defense interceptors, Ukraine goes to the front of the line. They will get this assistance before anyone else gets it. All told, Ukraine will receive hundreds of additional interceptors over the next year, helping protect Ukrainian cities against Russian missiles, Ukrainian troops facing air attacks on their front lines. Make no mistake, Russia is failing in this war. More than 2 years into Putin's war of choice, his losses are staggering. More than 350,000 Russian troops dead or wounded. Nearly 1 million Russians, many of them young people, have left Russia because they no longer see a future in Russia. And Kyiv, remember, fellas and ladies, was supposed to fall in 5 days, remember? Was still standing 2.5 years later and will continue to stand. All of we allies knew that before this war, Putin thought NATO would break. Today, NATO is stronger than it's ever been in its history. When this senseless war began, Ukraine was a free country. Today, it is still a free country. And the war will end with Ukraine remaining a free and independent country. Russia will not prevail. Ukraine will prevail. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a pivotal moment for Europe, for the transatlantic community, and I might add for the world. Let's remember, the fact that NATO remains the bulwark of global security did not happen by accident. It wasn't inevitable. Again and again at critical moments, we chose unity over disunion, progress over retreat, freedom over tyranny, hope over fear. Again and again we stood behind our shared vision of a peaceful and prosperous transatlantic community. Here at this summit, we gather to proclaim NATO is ready and able to secure that vision today and well into the future. Let me say this. An overwhelming bipartisan majority of Americans understand that NATO makes us all safer. The fact that both Democratic and Republican parties are represented here today is a testament to that fact. The American people know that all the progress we've made in the past 75 years has happened behind the shield of NATO. And the American people understand what would happen if there was no NATO. Another war in Europe, American troops fighting and dying, dictators spreading chaos, economic collapse, catastrophes. Americans, they know we're stronger with our friends. And we understand this is a sacred obligation. As President Reagan put it, and I quote, "If our fellow democracies are not secure, we cannot be secure. If you are threatened, we are threatened. If you're not at peace, we cannot be at peace." Reagan knew it then, and we know it now. Our nations will continue to keep faith with what we pledged in years to come. Now, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to end my remarks in a slightly unusual way. NATO is an alliance of nations, but also made up of leaders. And one person in particular has done an extraordinary job leading NATO for the last decade. Secretary General Stoltenberg, would he come forward? So much of the progress we've made in the alliance is thanks to the Secretary. He's a man of integrity and intellectual rigor, a calm temperament in a moment of crisis. a consummate diplomat who works with leaders across the political spectrum and always finds a way to keep us moving forward. Secretary, you've guided this alliance through one of the most consequential periods in its history. I realize, I was talking to your wife, I personally asked you to extend your service. Forgive me. And you put your own plans on hold. When the Russian war in Ukraine began, you didn't hesitate. Today, NATO is stronger, smarter, and more energized than when you began. And 1 billion people across Europe and North America, indeed the whole world, will reap the rewards of your labor for years to come in the form of security, opportunity, and greater freedom. For these reasons, I'm pleased to award you the highest civilian honor the United States can bestow, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Ask a military to come forward. I'm asking to read the citation.
President Biden nearing the end of his remarks there, speaking at a gathering of world leaders, NATO marking the 75th anniversary of an alliance that the president says is more powerful than ever. He talked about the enduring strength of the NATO alliance, but it was clearly a message being sent to Russia and Vladimir Putin about NATO's resolve to continue to support and help defend Ukraine. Let's go to our senior Washington correspondent, Hallie Jackson. Hallie, as we watch this, it's hard not to think that there are a couple of audiences that were important from the White House perspective, certainly a domestic audience, and, as we mentioned, Russia.
You said it, Lester. That's just what went through my head as you described the message to Russia that President Biden very clearly wanted to send with that announcement, of course, of additional help to Ukraine and those air defense systems, making very clear to Moscow, to Vladimir Putin, that NATO stands with Ukraine and will continue to do so. But there's another audience for this. There's a message also to those in the room, to the world leaders that have assembled here, that President Biden is trying to send, that he is strong enough and vigorous enough to take on this job for another 4 years. And then, of course, the message to viewers, to Americans, to voters, of the case that he has been trying to make since the 12 days since that debate performance widely panned as disastrous, that was an aberration, not the norm, and that he, in fact, can be energetic and vigorous and is up to the task of what he's got to do. All of that said, Lester, there is still, I think, on Capitol Hill, a sort of grim resignation here that President Biden is going to stay in the race, that people in some corners suggest they need to get behind him, even as you've seen about a half dozen now lawmakers come out and publicly call on the president to withdraw from the ticket. We know that late today there are some political prognosticators that have suggested that in at least 3 swing states, President Biden is now slightly less likely to be victorious, that former President Trump could, in fact, do better. And some battleground polling that is just out in the last couple of days shows that President Biden continues to very narrowly trail former President Trump in 5 of the 7 of them, although inside the margin of error. So, listen, important moment here for President Biden, but there are more to come, and people will be watching. Lester, big spotlight here for him.
And watching the president concluding his remarks, awarding the Presidential Medal of Freedom to Secretary General of NATO Stoltenberg. And now the speech is over as that meeting continues. Let's bring back our senior White House correspondent, Kelly O'Donnell. Kelly, what were your thoughts as you watch, and what are we hearing from the White House?
Well, certainly the awarding of the Medal of Freedom, which is the highest civilian honor, is a grand gesture that is meant to carry a message, especially to those in Congress who have not been as supportive of Ukraine, and a show of respect from this president for the long service of the Secretary General, difficult service. And so that was something that the White House had not told us about in advance, and it is a sign of sort of the importance of being the host nation of this. The president was able to work through his speech in a strong voice, declaring the key principles of his views on NATO as this conference gets underway. There will be other tests through the days ahead. As you pointed out on Thursday, it's expected that there will be a press conference. And what we do know from our planning is that that will expect to have more than the typical number of questions we normally see. Very often, this president does a news conference with another world leader standing next to him. him, and there are 2 questions from the American press and 2 from the world leaders delegation. We are told that the president will take more questions than that Thursday, and that will be something watched very closely.
All right, Kelly, thank you very much. That concludes this NBC News special report. We'll have much more ahead in our streaming network, NBC News Now, online at NBCnews.com, and a full wrap-up tonight on Nightly News. I'm Lester Holt in New York. Good day, everyone, and thank you for watching. Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.